It's back. He hits two back. He's done it. Sharma has done it. And the end, delirious.
Hello and welcome to The Last Wicket, a cricket podcast that is less spin and more straightforward. I can already hear Michael Vaughan's approval. I'm your host, Benny, and I'm joined by a few friends, Mayank,
Hey everyone.
Nish,
Hello, everyone.
and Himanish.
Hi, guys.
For this special midweek episode, we will be talking about South African star Faf du Plessis, who recently retired from Test cricket. We are joined by writer and South Africa superfan Rohit Sankar, who shares his thoughts on Faf's batting, captaincy, style, and the legacy he leaves behind. But first, I want to talk about a special cricketer whose birthday and year I'm proud to share with. Ravichandran Ashwin recently joined the 400-wicket club, becoming the second fastest to the milestone in the process. Let's start with you, Nish. What do you make of Ashwin and his achievement?
I just want to say that it's absolutely fantastic, and in today's world that we see a spinner dominate in such fashion, it's quite something to say. I don't think I've seen a spinner bowl with such guile and command over skill since Muralidharan, or perhaps you have to go back. And 77 matches, 400 wickets. It's nothing short of what he deserves, and he's extraordinary in the way he, kind of like works the batsman over. It's no luck, no fluke, or none of that factors. And it's just like, he reads the batsman like an open book. And he kind of like traps them time and time again. And I hope he goes on to achieve higher things in his career. And from an Indian perspective, I think he's easily the best ever.
Mayank?
So I think the series in Australia was in my favorite series of seeing Ashwin bowl. Because traditionally, if you think about it, even somebody like Anil Kumble, Harbhajan Singh, all these people have picked a lot of wickets in Test cricket and played for India for a long time, and even they have struggled overseas in their first tour generally. And Ashwin had a somewhat similar incident, where he didn't necessarily have a very good tour of England or Australia, and so I started to sort of question, especially considering how good Jadeja had been with the bat. I started to sort of question if maybe like Jadeja should be a preferred overseas spinner. And that's where like this tour of Australia, he was just phenomenal. And he's really, he talked to, I think it was one of the interviews recently where he mentioned that he's been in a really good headspace right now. So he's clearly very sure of what he wants to do. And yeah, the results really show the way, he made Steve Smith his bunny in that series. And then, his performances recently against England are not as much of a surprise considering his command at home. But that series, in my mind, was the best I've seen. Just a joy to watch him bowl these days, and also bat actually.
Yeah, so there's a moment in an athlete's life where you're at a peak, right? And with Ashwin, it's always been like he's been a very cerebral cricketer. So there are two aspects, right? There is thinking wickets and constructing wickets, and then there is the ability to pull it off. So there has to be a combination of the mental and the physical. And the thing with Ashwin that we've seen over the past 2-3 series is he is in that magical zone of confluence where both these things are right at their peak. He's always had the ability to think people out, but now his skill is at that level where he can execute it. So, the Smith and the Labuschagne dismissals in Australia and the Ollie Pope dismissals in the recent test are a prime example of that. So when you're bowling off spin to a right-hander, you want to threaten the inside edge, usually. You want to beat the inside edge. Now, the magic of Ashwin is that he has found a way to threaten the outside edge with drift. It's not a new thing, but you can see the amount of control he has over that. So what you do, so with someone like Ollie Pope, right, you bowl it and the batsman plays down a given line, but the ball is drifting outward. And then because it's drifting outward, it'll land on a line which is further outside the off and then turn inward. And that sort of threatens the outside edge. So now this person has found a way to execute that conceptualized beating of the outside edge perfectly. This person can control the seam the way he wants, right? Looking at his deliveries, their replays, right? So if he wants it to not turn, he will bowl with an upright seam.
Right.
If he wants it to turn, he will bowl with the seam which is going towards square leg. And the fact is that he can control it. And so therefore you have this magical combination of what he wants to do and what he's able to do. And it's all coming together in a wonderful concert. And that's what you're seeing. And that's what he's also said, that he is at the peak of his career and he's feeling very peaceful. He's not thinking as much because he's in that zone, right? So, in terms of the amount of guile he has, the way he thinks about the game, and now the way he's able to execute everything perfectly, as if he's a master of everything to do with the off spinning ball, he's just completely, at his peak and definitely the best spinner India have seen in their history. Yeah. So it's really good to watch it, like watch it happen in front of our eyes, because like 40 years down the line, this will be the legendary stories that people talk about. And
Right.
those people will not be fortunate enough to, watch this happen in real time, where we can watch it on like replays or on TV. And highlights don't show you the whole story because highlights are the climax, right? The
Yep.
way he builds it up is magic, and we are lucky to, be uh, watching it live.
Yeah, I think the aspect about challenging both edges is very interesting because I personally don't think he had that ability until the 2017 ODI snub. So when India lost in the Champions Trophy and they said, you know what, we're done with finger spinners, we're going to go with wrist spinners for ODIs, and both Jadeja and Ashwin, lost favor there. I think that's where Ashwin really started to realize that he can't limit himself with off spin, and he has all these he bowls the leg spin as well. He's other all these other deliveries that he keeps practicing, and that that has really given him the ability of challenging both the edges. But more than that, it's also implanted the seed of doubt in the batsman's head where they're like, yeah, he can bowl one the other way or bowl one which goes straight. So I think that ODI snub in a way has helped him, even though I know he's spoken about it and how it hurt him a little bit, and maybe that had to do with a little bit of his test performances in 2018 as well. But I think he's been able to overcome that, and he's found a way around it and used it to his advantage.
Yeah, and what stood out for me, Ashwin, I remember a couple of things. One, when initially he was called up right for Test debut, but then he had been kind of like an IPL. He had become an IPL star for CSK, and I remember thinking, I don't know. Yeah, sure, he has some good records in first class cricket, but the way he was bowling in T20, like my immediate bias or perception was, he's not going to be too attacking in Test cricket. People can just kind of play him off, and he's not going to take a bunch of wickets. But right from game one, he made an impression, and it very clearly was his almost like a preferred format because he had the time to like really work the batsman over to build and then get the reward, and then to sustain that over such a long amount of time, right? As cricket has evolved, as batsmen have evolved over the years, to still have that level of success and to constantly think about his game, right? I feel like for a lot of players, once they reach a certain amount of success, it's easy to kind of just take it for granted or just kind of like drift along just because you feel like, okay, I know everything now. I don't need to get extra coaching or any other tips. But he's the kind of person who's constantly thinking, who's constantly seeing how can he improve, what can he do better, and that kind of drive, which a lot of people mistake for either arrogance or snobbishness, but that's just the pursuit of excellence, right? For a champion athlete like him, he wants it drives him, right? Sometimes I've actually heard people say, "Oh, Ashwin is very insecure." That's not necessarily a bad thing because that's pushing him to be better. That's pushing him to constantly work harder and improve himself. So and the second thing that I wanted to mention was, we're right now we're in the middle of this pandemic, which for many of us, including myself, has kind of forced me to think about life and like, what do I need to kind of brought some perspective, right? Like on what I want to do with my life and how am I going about it. And Ashwin talked about that, like being without cricket for such a length of time. And he realized like without cricket, like I'm nothing, like I can't do anything else. And that perspective almost brought a big change in him. It relaxed him. It almost put things in priority, right? Like what is the most important thing in life. And I think that relaxation helped him to find or rediscover the joy of playing cricket almost. And you could see that right from the time, India came back from that uh, enforced break. he's just, and even Virat Kohli mentioned that, right? Like he was telling Ashwin the other day, like me and Ravi Shastri were talking about how you just changed. You're just a changed cricketer. We could see that in your walk. You could see that in the way you're enjoying your game. So that is just great to watch. Not just the excellence, but just a cricketer realizing his priorities in life and, doing what needs to be done to constantly be at the top of his game.
He can definitely become a podcaster and a commentator, Alex, because
Oh yeah,
his shows that he's been doing have been
yes,
amazing. He is a
he's
good speaker and he's a good thinker as well, and it's brilliant to watch.
absolutely Nish.
To that thinker point, right? The way he recalled, I know we live in an era of data and analysts working overtime behind the scenes, but it's still to accurately recall the Mohali of dismissal of Stokes, right, on the field during the event on a similar
That
ball,
was top
right?
class.
Now, that is something that's it shows that his gears are always turning in his head, right?
Right.
He's not like stagnant, and he lives in the moment, but at the same time he relies on like past lessons learned as well, right? So it's very good.
Yeah, I mean, but I was going to say about that LBW actually that I love the fact that he is that sharp, whether it's due to recent analysis or just a very sharp memory. I will say though that I'm so disappointed with his LBW reviews because he's always confident, and I think he gets the
Yeah.
line right, gets the length right, but he never figures out the height of the ball. I think that's
Yeah.
what I've sort of recurringly noticed, that he'll know that yeah, it's pitching in line, it's hitting in line, all of that is fine. He never gets the height right. And I think Kohli at this point is a bit of an Ashwin fanboy, and he's like, yeah, if Ashwin is confident, we'll review. And that's the
Right.
one thing I'll hope that he improves. But other than that, yeah, he's been a dream to
I
watch.
mean, anecdotally, yeah, I feel like every time they go for a review based on what Ashwin is saying, like in my mind, I'm like, that's not out. Like 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's never out. So I don't know. Kohli has tremendous trust in Ashwin, but it's not always repaid when it comes to uh, referrals. This week, The Last Wicket focuses our attention on one of the coolest cricketers in international cricket, Faf du Plessis. The star South African captain, batsman, fielder, and provider of hilarious quotes recently announced his retirement from Test cricket to focus on spending more time entertaining us in other formats. So, to talk the Faf legacy, we are joined by Rohit Sankar, an accidental cricket writer who jumped into the field after years of watching cricket. Rohit left his IT job to work with multiple publications and is a co-founder of Crick Ecstasy Media Private Limited, staff writer at Wisden. A South African fan since his childhood days, he prides on being the first ever fan of AB de Villiers, having fallen so in love with his backlift on Test debut that his first email password was AB related. I sincerely hope for Rohit's sake that he has changed his password since then. Rohit Shankar, welcome to The Last Wicket.
Hi, Benny. Good to have you here.
Well, yeah, thanks for agreeing to come on our podcast. Faf du Plessis, like you said in one of your articles at Wisden, I agree with you. He is cool. He is one of the coolest cricketers. And being a Chennai Super Kings fan, obviously it's almost like by default, we have to be fans of him. But even before he joined CSK, I used to be a big fan of Faf du Plessis. There's something about him that you just like him, like the way he carries himself, the swagger, everything about him is just cool. And then his batting too. And I know that for most neutral fans, everyone considers AB de Villiers to be their favorite or the greatest. And AB de Villiers might be like the better batsman, but I have a special place in my heart for Faf du Plessis. There's just something so cool about him and his batting, fielding, and just overall the way he carries himself is just great. So yeah, with his recent retirement from international, from Test cricket, I thought this was a good opportunity to kind of reflect on his legacy and what he leaves behind, not just his batting, but also his captaincy, especially considering the kind of tough times that South African cricket is going through. What were your initial thoughts when you heard that he's retiring from Test cricket?
See, I don't think it was sudden. I think it had been coming for a while, and Faf probably agreed to stick around for a bit.
Yeah.
With South Africa in transition, and I think it was always coming. But when is one of your favorite cricketers retiring, you definitely don't like. And Faf was definitely among my favorites. And it's kind of strange that he's a favorite for a lot of people because he's not that kind of a cricketer or somebody who had a great test career or a great career in any format for that matter. But
Yeah.
But he was pretty likable, and like you said, he carried himself pretty well, and there was this swagger about him, and he kind of had that personality where you just wanted to know more about him and what he was.
Right.
Yeah, so very nice to have you here, Rohit, and nice to talk after so long. We've been chatting on Twitter for a long time. Congratulations on the wisdom gig.
Yeah, thank you.
So we should start with a sort of recap of his test career, right? Because he announced himself with this very, very brilliant blockathon in Adelaide, and he had a few good knocks in between. And I remember his blockathon in Delhi as well because I was there, and South Africa batted like 143.1 overs on days 4 and 5 against Jadeja and Ashwin. So can you go through 4 or 5 of his very, very good test knocks that stand out for you?
Yeah. See, as you said, the first innings that comes to mind when talking of Faf's test career is definitely the Adelaide knock on his debut. For a debutant to say come down to South Australia and do what he did on that final day was just incredible. So it says all you need to know about the peak of what his temperament is and what du Plessis, the test cricketer's legacy could have been. Sadly, though, I don't think he ever maintained those high standards often in Test cricket, but there was still quite a few brilliant innings, like the Delhi one you mentioned. And I think Amla and de Villiers played more balls there, but du Plessis was really good too. And I think the whole blockathon trend began with du Plessis. And I don't think it was something that teams thought they could pull off before the Adelaide instance. And yeah, so there were a few other knocks I think that probably gone under the radar for Faf. One is the innings against India in Johannesburg in 2013, and South Africa was chasing this record score in the final innings, and it was a pretty good Indian attack too. And it kind of looked like we were going to witness another Faf blockathon at the onset, but he quickly changed gears, and yeah, there was de Villiers too at the other end, so he was helped by that a bit. But Faf was really good in that innings, and to take South Africa to a position where victory was really in their sight, that was an incredible innings. And yeah, so ultimately they did not win, but I think it's unfair to blame Faf for the result there. It was still a really good test knock. The other was in the day-night test in Adelaide. So he made 118 or something out of South Africa's total of 250 odd runs, and he remained unbeaten, and importantly he declared with South Africa just having
so that's when he declared, right, on day one.
Yeah. So I think that speaks to his captaincy also a bit, but yeah, we can get to that later. The other is of course is 199. That was his final 100, and it's kind of interesting that it stopped at 199. It's kind of like his career, I think. So yeah, I think those. I don't think there are a lot of great knocks. Probably he played a lot more better in ODIs, I guess.
He always seems to reserve his best for Australia. We were looking at his stats earlier. In Australia, he averages over 83 from 5 games. He seems to reserve his best for Australia. Why do you think that is?
I think, see, like I said, he loved this battle. So he is somebody who kind of got into a contest, and he wanted to be there for the team. So I think that is reflected in every aspect of his career, like the fact that he wanted to be there for his team. I think that's part of the legacy he leaves behind as a captain too. So in Australia, or when playing Australia, a very strong team, a team which has always been a kind of nemesis for South Africa. So when playing them, I think Faf, he had it, like possibly he had it in his mind that he wanted to really make an impact, and I think he's somebody who's like, if he wanted to put something into it, like if he wanted to do something really well, I think Faf could have always done it. So I think against Australia in particular, when he knew there was a big contest up for grabs every time, I think Faf brought out his best, and I think that was it. More than the kind of surfaces he batted on or anything else, I think it was that he loved that battle against Australia.
I mean, I'm thinking like Australia has this effect on some players, right? Like they seem to get under the skin of certain players, and that pushes them to almost raise their standards or bring their A game. And we've seen it with some Indian players in the recent past. And I wonder if it's the same with Faf, where for most of his career, he seemed to kind of like kind of flowed along, just doing what he needed to do. But when it came to Australia, it was almost like something in him, like I don't know if it's pride or ego, like he had to like prove himself or show that he's still like, did he like, I don't know the exact quote, but something about like alpha dog or something of that sort, where he wants to establish dominance. And I wonder if he had that with every other team, he probably might have ended up having a much better overall record.
Yeah, even in ODIs, I think his career took a turn against Australia. I think it was a tri-series or something in Zimbabwe where he scored like 300s on the trot and even won in the finals, chasing down 300 odd against Australia in the finals. I think it was a tri-series in Zimbabwe. And I don't think Faf had a lot of one-day hundreds or even good knocks until then. And I think after that, he started becoming this really good ODI player for South Africa. And yeah, so I think Australia always brought out the best in him, and he was, like I said, he was always prepared for this battle. And I wish he had that mindset against a lot of other teams. And I don't think Australia really tried to get under his skin as such, but I don't know, just the vibe they gave out, maybe. Not really sure what turned him against Australia, or like the way he played against Australia, but I thought he was a completely different player against it.
Right.
Yeah, now kind of sticking with that same theme of Faf raising his game for certain teams and kind of like averaging against the rest. There's a sense that he underperformed as a test player, right? Now, what do you think the final verdict is as an analyst, as a Proteas fan, right? Like from a Proteas fan perspective, did he do his best to kind of obviously they all did their best, right? But was he revered in the same way as say Amla or Callis, or was the passing of the baton kind of like on the same level as Amla, AB de Villiers, Callis?
No, see, I think he underperformed as a test player, that is for sure. He was nowhere where he could have been as a cricketer. I think part of it is also to do with how he kind of went back into a shell. Like I thought he was a perfect test number 3 to have, but South Africa had Hashim Amla at the time, and du Plessis did play a few games at number 3, I think, under Amla when he became captain. But once he became a full-time captain, I don't think he played ever at number 3, and I think he mostly played number 5, which I thought was really low for him. So like we can't talk about his batting without the broader context of what was happening in South Africa cricket throughout his career. Like he was this bridge between this Callis, Smith, Amla, everybody, and I think that played a part in how his career panned out. So like de Villiers was really fickle with his desire to play international cricket after that 2015 World Cup turmoil and all that. And Amla also started to wane after that. And even at the beginning, like when he came in, Callis was at the end of his career, Smith was at the end of his career, and South Africa was struggling to find an opening pair. And the middle order was always left to salvage an innings. And I think Faf was pretty good at it, but when de Villiers kept missing games later in his career and Amla became more kind of human, I think Faf struggled to hold that middle order on his own. And I don't think he has ever done that at any level of cricket, like holding himself on his own, holding a batting lineup on his own. And he's always had better batsmen around him, even at Titans. So I still think he would have kind of done the middle order shoring up thing if he could have fronted up and played at number 3 for the team. But once he settled in at number 5 and the top 4 was kind of very fickle, I don't think Faf could make an impact. The kind of impact he wanted to make, I definitely don't think he made.
Yeah, so that comment which you made where, he should have been at 3 or he could have been at 3 almost reminds me of Lakshman, where fantastic batsman, obviously achieved really great things in Test cricket, but sort of you have to look at the context of the lineup that he was playing in, and he had Dravid and Tendulkar around him, which is why he was almost sort of forced to play at 5, which is kind of similar to what we've heard for Faf, but I guess there was just a little more opportunity than VVS did towards the end of his career where he could have adjusted. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lakshman, I thought he was like, India had a really good top order at that time, and it was very difficult for Lakshman to play. With South Africa, I think du Plessis had a really good opportunity to bat in the top 3. I mean, at number 3, and especially when Amla started to win and his hand-eye coordination was never the same towards the end, and he really struggled to counter the new ball. And South Africa's opening pair was never solid at that time. So Amla was almost exposed every time, and I thought Faf at that time had to play above Amla at number 3, and Amla could have batted at 4, but he kind of I don't know why, but I think Faf at number 5, he was very comfortable batting at number 5, and with the kind of top order South Africa had, that was really not a luxury he had. So I think he missed out on a big opportunity there. He could have made a lot more impact if he had batted above Amla at that time. And yeah, that was definitely a missed opportunity for him.
Do you think he had the potential to be like an AB de Villiers type of batsman, like reaching the heights that AB did? Do you think Faf, because of all the things that you mentioned, being the bridge between the greater batsmen of that generation, do you think a lot of it was he had to tone down, so he missed out on potentially being as good as AB de Villiers?
I wouldn't say that. De Villiers was somebody who could carry a team on his own, and Du Plessis was never that kind of a player. He was more of a support player, and that is the thing. Like when Amla retired De Villiers retired and Amla was kind of waning, Du Plessis couldn't carry the batting lineup on his own, and
Right.
especially from that position, it was very difficult for him. But I don't think he ever had the kind of ability. It would be wrong to say ability, but he was never the kind of player to produce a match-winning innings on his own and kind of win games. It maybe happened a few times, but I think he always wanted that support. And like if somebody wanted to go ahead and make a big knock, he was always there at the other end as a support player. And I think that was the kind of captain also he was. He was not somebody who was going to lead from the front. He was somebody who could stay behind, motivate his players, and do his part, like in helping them achieve their heights. And I thought he was that kind of a player, not somebody who could become a De Villiers or even Amla.
Someone who knew his limitations and still
Yeah.
performed according to that.
Yeah, so I think you already kind of hinted towards one of my favorite Faf incidences, which was, him noticing, I think it was David Warner who was off the field,
Yeah.
and he said, we have a chance, he's off the field, we're 9 down, let's declare and go on. So I think that way was a very interesting decision. And I love those decisions, because as much as we want teams to be strategic and look at data and have all the right analytics, sometimes it's also about gut feeling. And that's what I felt like from that decision of Faf's. So tell us a little bit about his captaincy. He also had, some controversies with the Mint incident and all of that. So yeah, walk us through what you think his captaincy was, and would you say it was also somewhat of an unfulfilled chapter similar to his batting?
So I mean, his captaincy towards the end was kind of shambolic, and that is also part. I mean, it was also influenced by the decisions the management was making at the time, the selection issues, the pressure from the government to maintain the quota numbers in the team, and all that. But I thought he was a natural leader, and I wouldn't say his captaincy was unfulfilled. I thought he was a really good captain, and I actually am a huge fan of his captaincy. The only thing is, towards the end, he did not have the team to do the kind of things good captains can do, and his own performances were also kind of waning by that time. And but I still think he was a really good captain. The Adelaide 100 and the declaration was kind of that kind of gut feel, and that kind of feel for a game is important for a captain. So and he was not against the numbers either. So you can remember the 2019 ODI World Cup when the first game he gave the first over to Imran Tahir. So that was definitely a decision made in the background to counter Jason Roy and Johnny Besto, and it worked. But that is not about it. He was open to accepting it and kind of doing that in the first over of a World Cup against the home team is like a team that was always expected to win that World Cup. So to do that was really good. And I thought, but after the World Cup, especially with a lot of players kind of waning, and South Africa was struggling to find the right place for right positions and all that. And then they had this Indian tour where everything went completely awry. And I think the 2015 tour they had of India. So they were kind of expecting those kind of tracks where to turn, and then they came to India and Umesh Yadav and Mohammad Shami killed them, and they kind of had to resort to really lame excuses. So I think even considering all that, by his highs as a South African player, a captain was still pretty good. Like Graeme Smith and Hansi Cronje had really great teams. I don't think Faf ever had that kind of a team. So he did not have peak Amla or peak De Villiers or peak Steyn, and he lost men like the Kolpak exodus. There was a lot of players who went out. There were a lot of players who went to England, and I think the other thing is the Sandpaper Gate series. So that series that was his high as a captain. So I think how he carried himself at that time, and how in the wake of that incident he was kind of supportive of Smith, but he was not ready to give the advantage to the Australians on the field because of that. He had gone through something similar with the Mint incident in Australia. So it was easy for him to, resort to cheap means and kind of give it back to the Aussies at that time. But I think as much as he stood by his own team, he focused on the cricket and, kind of took the, what do you call it? He took the sheen of the Australians, but he did not kind of let them go with it. And I thought the series, I think they ended the final test with a massive win. And that series was possibly his biggest high as a captain. And I thought he was a really good captain. Like, I thought he carried himself well. He had a team, like for a South African captain, it was not just about what was happening on the field. He carried himself well off the field. He had to counter the South African management and the cricket board. There were a lot of issues with the transformation. So I think he spoke up for the team at all those times. So as considering all this, I think he had a really good stint as a captain.
Yeah, sorry, man, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned like team-wise, obviously he did not have as good a team as Smith did, and that makes total sense. That's fair. So would you, considering his circumstances, say that he was probably in the recent decades South Africa's second best captain after Smith? And I'm just saying tactically, you might even say he was better than Smith, but I'm just trying to get your.
I think Hansi Cronje was probably South Africa's best captain. And Smith had a really great team. He was a good captain, but I would say Faf was almost on par with Smith. Like they won a lot of away games, but Smith had the perfect team. He had everybody, and Faf never had those kind of players. And but in terms of tactics, I think, and in terms of kind of relying on his gut and bringing that perfect mixture of that gut feel and kind of decisions that go in the background, I think he did really well as a captain.
I'm also thinking of the situation that South African cricket finds itself in right now, right? Like I feel like for the last couple of years, the news that's been coming out of South Africa has been not just disappointing but discouraging for fans of South African cricket, and it coincides with a time where the captaincy they're still trying to figure out who is their best captain going forward, and now Faf is leaving. I just think so. I just wonder if they will miss Faf the person more than like the captain or the cricketer, because he just seemed to have a great attitude about life. Like I remember, in the Wisden article that he wrote about Faf, that Sandpaper Gate series, there was another big incident which would have probably been the talk of the series if not for Sandpaper Gate, which was the clash between David Warner and Quinton de Kock. And you talk about this thing where when this whole thing is going on in the stairwell in Durban, Du Plessis comes out of the dressing room in a towel, like nothing else, just a towel, and he's like trying to diffuse the situation. And for me, that just gives a peek into the mindset of a person who doesn't take himself too seriously, who doesn't take life too seriously. It's a game, and he's just like kind of like trying to calm everyone down and just have a good attitude about it. So how much do you think is the loss of Faf du Plessis? I know he's still playing other forms of the game, but just his absence from the team, not just as a batsman or a captain, but just as a player, how do you think that's going to be impacting South African cricket?
Yeah, see, you're right about the captaincy thing, because I don't think Aiden Markram is ready yet, and Quinton de Kock is possibly not a captaincy material. So I don't think they have found the ideal captain, and that kind of played a part in Faf prolonging his career. I think he was ready to go by 2019 itself after that World Cup, but he kind of extended because the team was in a real fix and he knew that. And yeah, so now that Faf is gone, I think they're going to miss him as a person in the dressing room, like you said, because Dickok is somebody who's kind of very, I mean, you can see from him, from his mannerisms on the field and from how he carries himself, he's kind of, he's not somebody who, turn up and intimidate an opposition. So he might do that with the bat, but he definitely wouldn't do that with his captaincy. And I think that's what Faf did. That's possibly why he also had some success against Australia, like we discussed before. He was somebody who could, put himself in front of the team and, lead them. So that kind of a person who's, who can be a leader, but who's still, kind of very carefree and still a friend to probably every player. So that kind of a player is very difficult to find. And I think South Africa in this particular phase will really miss him more than De Villiers maybe, because De Villiers is possibly a bit more self-centered maybe. Might be stretching a bit, but still. And Du Plessis is certainly a team person, and I think in this phase where South Africa are trying to lift themselves out from a really shambolic state they are in, and I think they're going to miss Faf and even Stain for that matter.
Yeah, so finally, I wanted to ask, like, all things considered, what do you think his legacy will be for South African cricket, and who is in line to replace him as the batsman in the middle order? Who are the people we can look forward to?
Yeah. So, I think the biggest legacy he's going to leave behind is his grit and commitment to the team as such. So, like there were a section of people who were blaming him for, speaking out against the Kolpak players at that time, the Rosu and Olivier and Kyle Abbott. So, because he himself was a Kolpak player, but there was a subtle difference. The thing was that these players South Africa had invested in, and they were kind of seeing them as a future at that time, and there was no discussion with the team or anything when they took up that decision, and it came at the end of a series. Like, it was a bolt from the blue for them. And Favs was different. He actually turned down a Kolpak deal because they wanted him to play for England in the long term, and he was not ready for that, and he took up a different Kolpak deal only to return 2 years later. So his focus was always on South African cricket, and I think that kind of commitment for a team where there are so many issues going on is difficult to find, and especially with the lure of franchisee cricket now and the kind of money that South African players make, it's a total imbalance, and it's difficult to find somebody who can do that. And I think Faf, with his commitment and the kind of grit he brought to the team, he showed that like you could still be a great player for South Africa and still make it big in terms of money. He did make well in other franchise leagues. He did have time for everything, and I think that is a legacy he leaves behind. And
I didn't know about this Kolpak thing at all. That's news to me. It's very commendable that he turned it down and.
I feel like England were trying to find a replacement for Kevin Peterson, literally. So they were like, let's find the next best South African batsman.
No, he was 21 at that time. So this happened very early in his career. He was just 21. So I think it was Nottinghamshire. So they wanted him on a 3-year contract as a player, but they also wanted him to qualify for England. So he was not ready for that. So he turned them down. But he got another offer from Lancashire, and he played for them for 2 years, I think. And then he returned to South Africa. By then, he was already playing for the South Africa A team and all that. And he came in around the 2011 World Cup time again.
What is your favorite Faf moment in Test cricket?
Oh, definitely the towel model one. So coming out of the dressing room and doing that, I mean, I don't think any other player could pull it off.
It's sad that Sandpaper Gate overshadowed that. That's a baller move.
Yeah. And Himanshu is talking about the middle order play. So I think South Africa don't have a lot of options, but there are pretty good players coming through the pipeline, and there's already somebody like Rassie van der Dussen in the setup.
Yeah.
But there's somebody else who's making the big runs in domestic scene now. His name is Reynard van Tonder. So he was their under-19 captain in New Zealand 3 years back, and now he's kind of churning out runs big time. and he's somebody who he was actually called up to the test team lately because South Africa had a lot of COVID cases, so he was in and around the test team for that series, and he's somebody who could come in for him. There are a few other players
So
like Subair Hamza and all who have already played, but
right.
I think Van Tonder is a ideal candidate now.
So to end, I just wanted to ask, I don't know how this works. So with the Kolpak deals now going off, right, because of Brexit, does that positively impact South African cricket in the sense that you'll retain talent, but you also have like your uh, quotas to deal with, and so like what combination of that will have an impact on South African cricket, because you have quotas, but you have Kolpaks returning as well. They can't go and play county cricket anymore. So what do you see happening with South African cricket in the next 5-10 years? Because it's going downhill for the past 5 years. So
yeah, see, the transformation targets are only going to get steeper. So right now, for 1 year or so, I think they're sticking with the older guidelines. So that included playing 4 colored players and 2 black players on an average over a 1 year period across formats. So what they would do is they still had somebody like Rabada and Lungi Engdi in the test team. So they kind of managed it with the T20Is, and they would always get a couple of bilaterals which did not matter a lot, and they kind of bridge the gap then. So now with the targets getting even steeper, it'll be really tough for them to kind of make that up. But I think over time, I mean, I'm not against transformation, like because primarily because almost 85 to 90% of the population are blacks, and over time it's going to bring out more talent only. But it is possibly fast tracked at the international level, and it's kind of messed up a lot with their plans. And see, the Kolpak players, they're going to return, and I mean, a few of them are going to get deals in the county cricket as overseas players still. And now there are new avenues, like a lot of players are now migrating to New Zealand. There's Devon Conway who's played for New Zealand, who's playing for New Zealand now. So he went from South Africa 3 years back or so. And there are a few other players who have gone to New Zealand too.
Wagner also. Wagner was
South African. And there's Michael Rippon. So there are a few other players who have gone. And so I think Kolpak players, possibly maybe 1 or 2 could come into the test team in the next few months or so. But aside from that, I don't see a lot of them coming back to play for South Africa.
Yeah, not related to this, but just something that, when I think of Faf du Plessis shots, right, I think one of the most standout shots for me is the way he commits to coming down straight down the wicket, and those straight lofted shots. It was very like a Hayden in his prime feel to that shot as a right-handed batsman. So I just wanted to share that. It was very unique. I don't think I've seen any other player do it with such conviction and clarity when he does that to like fast bowlers, right? It's pretty like stunning in its full flow. I just wanted to share that.
He had a very different grip also. Like there was a huge gap between the 2 hands, and he kind of held the bat like he was always going to play on the leg side. So his grip was really unique. And I think when he was at school or something, the coach tried to change it, or he just wanted him to have a more conventional grip. But du Plessis was never ready for that, and I think it kind of worked for him because of what happened to his career. And like you said, that shot was really that is definitely du Plessis' standout shot, stepping out to a pacer. I remember him doing that to Mitchell Johnson once, so in an ODI. So to do that against Johnson is incredible.
I was thinking the same, that I think when we were talking about players moving to New Zealand, I was thinking about how I believe Neil Wagner used to be a classmate or schoolmate of Faf du Plessis. I think I read that somewhere. So it definitely seems like South African talent has opportunities, if not in England, elsewhere, which obviously is a little disappointing from an international cricket perspective. But you kind of see their perspective as well.
Yeah, I think to kind of bring this all like tied up nicely. South Africa, I feel like it's never short of talent. It's just unfortunate with all of the internal issues that they have, players choosing, and justifiably so, what works for them, right? What works for them, what works for their family, their future, looking for greener pastures. And I really feel like more than AB de Villiers, because you kind of hinted at that before, that he has got other things on his plate, like thinking about certain things affecting himself or his own career, but I feel like Faf is more of a statesman than any other South African player there currently. And I think he still has, even though he's stepped down from Test cricket and he's focusing his attention on other things, I think he's still probably one of the best statesmen for South African cricket. And I think he still has a big role to play in the coming years.
Yeah, I'd agree to that. I mean, I definitely see him coming back as a coach or maybe at least a consultant of sorts.
Yeah.
And South Africa definitely needs somebody like him around.
Yeah. If nothing else, he can probably teach his swagger to some of the younger players, project that confidence. All right. Well, Rohit, thank you so much for coming on our show to talk about the brilliant Mr. Faf du Plessis. Like you and many others, I hope he sticks around as a player for a while longer, and I wouldn't mind it at all if most of that is with the Chennai Super Kings. For our listeners, you can find Rohit on Twitter at IamRohit_SN. Rohit, please come back on the show again. If not Faf, I'm sure we can find other South Africa-centric stuff to talk about with you.
Absolutely. It was great fun.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Last Wicket. Do join us next episode for a very special conversation where we talk about the book, The Fire Burns Blue, A History of Women's Cricket in India. You will not want to miss that. So do subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes, follow us on your social media feeds, and do spread the word about the show. For more details, please visit our website at thelastwicket.com. Once again, thank you for listening, and we hope you come back for more. From all of us here at The Last Wicket, have a great week.